Welcome to everyone listening to our channel today. The story we are bringing you is titled, I Had a C section. My husband insisted on being in the delivery room. Right before the baby came out, the doctor panicked and ran. The following scene left everyone in shock. Chicago. Late winter that year brought a biting chill that seeped through the window cracks and overpowered even the strong scent of antiseptic in Lakeside Memorial Hospital. Out on the streets, people were taking down their holiday lights and preparing for the end of the year, while I was preparing to step into the delivery room for the very first time. My name is Lauren Vance, 32 years old. Before going on maternity leave, I worked as an internal payroll accountant for a mid-sized logistics firm downtown. My job wasn't glamorous. It revolved entirely around spreadsheets, invoices, and contracts. But it taught me to appreciate clarity. Every penny in and out had to be accounted for. Yet, the most human thing in the world, family dynamics, is rarely as clear-cut as an Excel sheet. I was 39 weeks pregnant with my first child. My belly had dropped heavy, and my feet were so swollen that no matter which side I slept on, I woke up aching. Dr. Harrison Locke, the obstetrician who had been managing my case since my third trimester, was very firm that I shouldn't attempt a natural birth. My baby was breech. I had partial placenta previa, and I had developed mild anemia in the final weeks. When Dr. Locke told me I needed a scheduled C-section, I sat in silence for a long time. I wasn't afraid of the scalpel as much as I was terrified of the feeling of lying there, numb from the waist down, completely, surrendering my fate to others. My husband, Tom Vance, squeezed my hand under the exam table. Don't overthink it, honey. We listened to the doctor. The only thing that matters is that you and the baby are safe. I gave him a weak, crooked smile. He made it. I sound as simple as booking a haircut. Tom smiled back, but his eyes didn't. That was just how he was, a man of few words, but deep thoughts. Tom is the lead architect and co-founder of a boutique design build firm. He became as the lead architect and co-founder of a boutique design build firm. Started with a buddy. Outsiders often call him overly demanding. A single skewed line on a blueprint or a miscalculated metric, and he'd make his team redo it until it was perfect. I used to joke that living with him meant I'd get a written citation if I hung a coat hanger crookedly. He'd just reply, a crooked coat hanger is fine. A crooked foundation is a disaster. I'd laugh, not knowing that his exasperating level of meticulousness would one day save my life and our babies. Before I was admitted to the hospital, Tom prepared my medical binder with more precision than I prepared the baby's hospital bag. He printed the surgery schedule, the maternity ward's direct line, the charge nurse's extension, Dr. Locke's credentials, my blood type, medical history, allergies, and the hospital's official policy regarding the support person in the operating room. Lakeside Memorial allowed one registered family member into the OR for a C-section, but you couldn't just stand anywhere. The support person had to wear full sterile scrubs and sit strictly at the head of the bed, behind the sterile boundary. The surgical field would be blocked by a blue drape. You absolutely could not cross the line, touch the instruments, or interfere with the surgical team. Tom read the instruction sheet over and over, then turned to me. I'll be sitting right by your head. You just look at me and breathe. If you need anything, squeeze my hand. I nodded. It sounded so simple, but it instantly soothed me. Sometimes a woman about to give birth doesn't need grand speeches. She just needs someone to sit there and prove she isn't being left alone. But my mother, Eleanor Higgins, didn't see it that way. My mom was 56, a former high-end real estate agent in Naperville, a wealthy Chicago suburb. Her whole life was about calculating value, judging people by their zip codes, their brands, and their titles. She loved me, I won't deny that, but her love was like gripping a handful of sand too tightly. The harder she squeezed, the more it slipped through her fingers. That afternoon, she sat on our living room sofa, watching Tom organize papers into a neat plastic folder. You're awfully intense about this, Tom, she remarked. She's just having a baby, not signing a $10 million corporate merger. Tom paused for a beat, keeping his voice respectful. I just want to be thoroughly prepared so I have peace of mind, Eleanor. My mom took a sip of her Earl Grey tea, her eyes sweeping over the documents. Private hospitals are run by professionals. You don't have a medical degree, so I don't get in their way. You'll just be a nuisance. I sat next to her, my heart sinking. Mom, Tom is just going to sit by my head. The doctor approved it. She looked at me, lowering her voice but not softening her tone. I'm telling you this for your own good, Lauren. Men think hovering helps, but it just creates chaos. Besides, having a baby at a premier hospital like Lakeside isn't cheap. Don't let his side of the family think we're footing the entire bill. His side of the family. That phrase pricked my heart like a needle. His side of the family meant my mother-in-law, Martha Vance, who had taken a Greyhound bus all the way from a working-class town in Ohio early that morning. She arrived carrying a massive canvas tote bag filled with fresh farm eggs, homemade bone broth in Tupperware, ginger root, and half a dozen hand-knitted baby swaddles that smelled like sunshine and line-dried fabric. Martha wasn't a woman of refined words. Meeting my mother, she just gave a warm, humble smile. Hello, Eleanor. I brought some things from the country. Once Lauren delivers, I can heat up some good, nourishing soup for her. My mom looked at the canvas bag, the corner of her mouth twitching in a barely concealed sneer. The hospital provides a full postpartum culinary menu, Martha. Bringing all this clutter from out of state is just going to create a mess for the kids to clean up. Martha stood frozen for a second before nodding. Yes, well, I just figured homemade is always best. I felt a lump in my throat. I wanted to tell my mother that the things my mother-in-law brought weren't about financial value. They were priceless in their affection. But I stayed quiet. My silence wasn't kindness. It was weakness. People say keeping the peace is a virtue, but sometimes staying quiet when you shouldn't just chips away at your own soul. Tom walked out of the study right at that moment. He looked at his mother, stepped forward, and took the heavy bag from her hands. Give that to me, Mom. I'm so glad you're here. I feel better already. Martha looked up at her son, her eyes reddening quickly, but she turned away, pretending to dust off her coat sleeve. Better about what? I don't know a thing. About modern medicine. I'm just here to make sure my daughter-in-law gets a warm meal. Tom smiled. That's more than enough, Mom. My mother stayed silent. I knew she heard him, but she didn't say another word. Suddenly, a strange distance filled our small living room. On one side was my mother, who always believed she knew the absolute best for me, viewing the world through a lens of status. On the other was my mother-in-law, a simple, rural woman who only knew how to offer the most honest, unpolished parts of herself. And there I was, standing in the middle, carrying a child about to be born, my heart heavy as a stone. That night, while my mom was in the guest room, rearranging the baby clothes to her liking, Martha sat next to me on the sofa. She placed her calloused hand over mine, so lightly she seemed afraid of hurting me. Lauren, sweetie, childbirth is like passing through a very narrow door. Don't let the bickering of old folks bother you. When you're in there, just listen to the doctor, listen. To Tom, I'll be right out here. I looked at her, my eyes welling up. You're not mad at my mom, are you? Martha offered a sad smile. Mad? What for? Everyone loves their kids in their, quote, own way. But when love makes the kid anxious, it defeats the purpose, doesn't it? It was such a quiet remark, yet I remembered it forever. The night before my admission, I couldn't sleep. The baby kicked in slow, rolling waves, as if knowing he was about to leave his warm, familiar home. I sat on the edge of the bed, watching Tom check his binder for the final time. I looked at him, feeling a mix of amusement and profound affection. Which number check is this? I asked. The last one. He had been saying that since 4 p.m. He looked up, his face tragically serious. Well, it's the last one for tonight. I burst out laughing, then suddenly felt tears streaming down my face. A woman, about to give birth, is a strange creature, laughing one second, crying the next. Completely powerless against her own hormones. Tom quickly set the binder down and pulled me against his shoulder. What's wrong, honey? I shook my head. I'm scared. He was quiet for a moment, then spoke very slowly. I can't promise that. Everything will be easy. But I promise that when you roll into that operating room, you will not be alone. Hearing that, I gripped his arm tightly. Outside the window, the Chicago wind rattled the bare branches against the glass. In the living room, my mother was still refolding baby clothes. In the kitchen, my mother-in-law was scrubbing a pot to make me a light broth before my pre-surgery fasting window began. 2. Mothers, 2 different ways of loving. As for me, I just thought about getting through tomorrow. Once the baby and I were safe, I figured all the family friction would slowly untangle itself. I was so naive to believe that, because I didn't know that behind this meticulously planned surgery, unseen hands were quietly arranging something sinister. The blue sterile drape in that operating room, the thing meant to shield me from the surgical cuts, was about to conceal a conspiracy I would never forget for the rest of my life. When I decided to marry Tom, my mother didn't throw a massive tantrum. She didn't cry, she didn't slam doors, and she certainly didn't threaten to disown me like in the movies. Having spent decades closing cutthroat real estate deals, she knew that to keep your child, you shouldn't pull the leash too obviously. She just said one very light sentence: "You're an adult. I won't forbid it. But when you marry a man, you marry his background. When things get hard, don't say, 'I didn't warn you.'" I felt sad hearing that, but I chalked it up to a mother's natural worry. The problem was, her worry increasingly took the form of a scale. Tom on one side, and pedigree, property, and old money on the other. And she always concluded that my husband came up short. Tom grew up in Dayton, Ohio. His father died when he was in middle school. His mother, Martha, cleaned houses and picked up shifts at a diner to put him through school. He managed to get a scholarship to an architecture program in Chicago. He didn't have a condo bought by his parents. He didn't drive a luxury car on our wedding day, and he had no influential uncles to pull strings. He only had a brilliant mind, a back willing to bend for hard work, and an exasperatingly careful personality. My mother looked at all that and said, "Being smart is fine, but smart without a manger. Foundation is like a tree planted in concrete. It looks green, but the roots don't go deep." I argued with her. Tom runs a legitimate business. His firm is growing fast. She took off her reading glasses, her voice flat. Growing is different from established. A woman shouldn't just look at what a man promises. She needs to see if he can catch her when the roof caves in. Logically, she wasn't entirely wrong. Money can't buy everything, but a lack of it makes every small problem huge. But she forgot that some men are poor in cash, but wealthy in responsibility, while others are rich but painfully stingy with basic human decency. Since our wedding, Tom always treated my mother with polite deference. He called her Eleanor. Why? Because my mother explicitly told him never to call her Mom. The first time he slipped up and called her Mom at a family dinner, she gave a cold smile. "Just call me Eleanor, Tom. Your mother is still alive in Ohio. We wouldn't want her feeling replaced." The dinner table went dead silent. I looked at Tom and saw his hand freeze over in his plate. He just replied, "Yes, ma'am. I understand. I hurt for him." But he never brought it up again. Over the years, whenever he visited her house, he brought gifts, fixed her leaky sink, recaulked her tub, and realigned her cabinet doors. She accepted the help, but always added, "You could have just hired a handyman, Tom." One time, driving home, I asked him, "Does she make you sad?" He kept his eyes on the road and smiled faintly. "A bit. But she's your mother, and I don't want to put you in a tough spot." That made me feel both overwhelming love and deep shame, because clearly he was the one in the tough spot, yet he prioritized my feelings. Martha was the complete opposite. She rarely offered unsolicited advice. She never asked how much money we made or what was in our savings account. Whenever she visited from Ohio, she brought simple things: garden vegetables, homemade jams, a baked pie. She'd always say, "I don't have fancy things to give you kids, just clean, honest food." I once told her she didn't need to carry heavy bags on the bus, that we could buy everything in Chicago. She smiled, revealing teeth stained by years of cheap coffee. "You can buy it, but making it for you gives me peace of mind." I remember once she visited on the exact same day my mother dropped by. Martha had brought a massive bag of organic farm-milled oats she got from a neighbor, saying it was perfect for my pregnancy digestion. My mom looked at the bag by the door and let out a soft chuckle. "People in the city eat FDA certified?" Store-bought organic now, Martha. Hand-carried stuff like this? You never really... I know what's in it. Martha bent down, quietly retying the bag. Yes, I'm just a country woman. I just thought fresh was better. My face burned. I was about to snap back when Tom walked out of his home office. He didn't tell my mom she was wrong, nor did he let his mother feel humiliated. He simply picked up the heavy bag, carried it to the kitchen, and said, "These oats look amazing, Mom. I'll make Lauren a bowl for breakfast tomorrow." My mom scoffed. A man hovering around the kitchen stove? Tom turned around, still perfectly polite. "My wife is pregnant, Eleanor. I do. Whatever needs doing." Standing behind him, Martha's eyes went quiet. I recognized that look. It was the pride of a poor mother who had no inheritance to leave her son, but who had successfully raised a man who knew how to fiercely love his wife. There are things in life that don't appear on property deeds or bank statements. Their true value only shows when disaster strikes. And as my due date approached, this truth became undeniable. The conflict peaked the day before my admission. My mother came over under the guise of helping me prep lunch, but really, she just wanted to inspect my Enze hospital bags. She pulled out a baby blanket, sniffed it, and frowned. "What detergent did your mother-in-law use? It smells overwhelmingly like the outdoors." "Martha washed it and dried it in the sun," I said. "I think it smells nice." My mom paused. "You call her Martha to me, but I hear you calling her Mom too." "Tom, you're getting awfully sweet on her." I froze. I married Tom. Calling his mother Mom is normal. She smiled, but it lacked warmth. "Normal? Sure. I'm just reminding you to be smart. You need to remember whose blood runs in your veins." I put the baby shirt down, a cold feeling washing over me. "When you say things like that, you make it really hard for me." "Hard how?" "I'm telling you the truth. A woman who marries into a family and doesn't guard her own interests will have no one to cry to when things go south." I didn't answer. If I argued, she'd say I was taking his family's side. If I stayed quiet, the weight in my chest just grew heavier. That evening, noticing me staring blankly at the dining table, Martha poured me a glass of warm water. "Are you tired, honey?" I shook my head, just feeling heavy. She looked at me for a moment. "Lauren, whatever your mother says, don't let it sit in your belly. Older folks sometimes love their kids so much that their words turn sharp. But sharp words cut straight to the bone." I looked up at her. She didn't complain about being disrespected. She didn't throw a pity party. She was just worried about me. "You aren't truly hurt by her?" I asked softly. Martha gave a sad smile, smoothing the edge of the table runner. "Of course I am. I'm human, not a block of wood. But I came here for your delivery, not to win an argument. If you pull a tight string too hard, it snaps. And you kids are the ones who get hurt." My nose stung. A woman whose pride had been battered knew how to step back for the sake of the children, yet I, the one caught in the middle, kept hiding behind the excuse of keeping the peace. Near midnight, Tom finally emerged from his home office. He rubbed my shoulders. "Back still hurting?" "A little. But it's better." Martha stood up immediately. "Let me go get the heating pad for you." "Mom, go to sleep," I urged. "We have to be at the hospital early." She waved me off. "Sleep? At a time like this?" When I had Tom, I was in labor. From the afternoon until dawn. Us women understand each other. Just then, Tom's phone lit up. He glanced at the screen, and his expression shifted. It wasn't panic, but a sudden, intense tightening like a guitar string, pulled to its limit. "Who's calling this late?" I asked. He silenced the ringer. "Just the firm. A project issue." My mom walked out of the guest room, catching the tail end of the sentence. She immediately scowled. "Tomorrow your wife goes into surgery, and you're still obsessing over a project? Tom, I'm going to be blunt. Whatever business you have, childbirth is life and death. Do not let Lauren lie on that table while your head is stuck in blueprints." Tom lowered his head. "Yes, ma'am, I know. Tomorrow I will not leave Lauren's seed." My mom looked at him skeptically. "Knowing is good, but plenty of men talk a big game and are nowhere to be found when the time comes." I pulled my mom's arm. "Mom, he already sorted everything out." She stopped talking, but her eyes remained full of doubt. Tom stood silently for a few seconds before stepping out onto the balcony to return the call. The glass door was slightly ajar. I only caught fragments of his hushed voice, technical specs, the developer, Thorne's group. I didn't know then that the name Thorne would soon drag my entire family into a hurricane. I only saw my husband's silhouette through the glass, tall and lean, against the dark, freezing Chicago skyline. In the kitchen, my mother-in-law was washing the pot for tomorrow's broth. In the bedroom, my own mother was sighing, convinced her daughter had married a man without a solid foundation. Two mothers, staying awake for me, each viewing my future through completely different lenses, and I just rested my hand on my belly, feeling the baby kick, telling myself that after tomorrow, once the baby arrived safely, I would slowly help everyone understand each other. It's true what they say. Expectant mothers dream of peace, but life loves to throw a bucket of ice water on those dreams. Later, when everything was exposed, I finally understood that the late-night phone call wasn't just a minor blueprint edit. It was the first warning siren that the storm outside had found a way into our home. Tom's company, Vance Design and Build, sounded established, but it was really only 5 years old. Their office was in a dated building off Milwaukee Avenue. They didn't have a massive staff, and the AC in their conference room sounded like a dying tractor in the summer. But the firm had one thing Tom was immensely proud of. They ran clean numbers, built rock-solid designs, and absolutely refused to secure bids through backdoor bribes. Tom once told me, being in construction and ignoring the foundation is like marrying someone while hiding massive debt. It looks great at first, but sooner or later, the cracks show. I had laughed, folding baby clothes. You talk about construction like you're giving marriage counseling. He laughed back. Well, if you want something to last, it has to be honest from the ground up. That sentence echoed in my mind for years to come. Around the time I was due, Tom's firm had just won a massive design and technical oversight contract for a luxury lakefront complex. The total project value was around $4.5 million. To others, it was just business news. To Tom's small firm, it was life-changing. If they nailed it, they'd make a name for themselves, secure capital, and gain the luxury of turning down the shady, corner-cutting jobs they sometimes had to take just to keep the lights on. The night before the hospital, after his balcony phone call, Tom came back. Inside, his face was neutral, but after years of marriage, I knew when his eyes were holding a secret. Is there an issue with the project? I asked. He sat on the edge of the bed, gently rubbing my swollen ankles. Nothing major. The developers want to verify a few lines in the technical report tomorrow morning, but I'm being admitted tomorrow morning. I already told them I'm not going anywhere. I sent the file to my partner, Liam. He's handling it. I frowned. Are you sure? This project is huge for you guys. Tom looked up at me, his voice crystal clear. Nothing is bigger than you and the baby. That reassured me. But it was exactly because of that choice that the people trying to ruin him were able to set their trap. They knew he would choose his family, and they weaponized that choice. The man who lost the bid to Tom was David Thorne, CEO of Thorne Construction Group. I had only met him once at an industry holiday party. He was in his 40s, slicked back hair, wearing a wide, calculating smile. When he saw Tom, he patted his shoulder a little too hard. You're a sharp guy, Tom. The younger generation is vicious. Even a veteran like me has to watch his back. Tom smiled politely. You're too kind, David. We just stuck to the specs. Thorne raised his scotch glass, his eyes narrowing slightly. Sticking to the fangs. Specs is good, but in this business, sometimes being too strictly by the book makes it very hard to survive. I hadn't liked that comment, but I didn't think much of it. I assumed it was just the bruised ego of a losing bidder. But there are people who smile when they lose because they are hiding a knife. The tragedy is that when the knife is hidden behind a smile, kind people assume it's just a toothpick. After that party, Tom had simply said, David Thorne is a dangerous guy. Dangerous how? I asked. He's not mad he lost the project. He's terrified of my technical appendix. Tom explained that during the site survey for the lakefront project, his team discovered severe risks regarding unstable soil, old drainage lines, and high subsidence probability if corners were cut. To convince the developers to go with his safer but more expensive design, Tom included a comparative case study of an older commercial housing project in the Chicago suburbs. That old project had experienced foundation cracking and wall shifting, yet its final inspection reports were flawless. The lead contractor on that old project? Thorne Construction Group. I felt a chill run down my spine. So your report basically exposed them? Tom nodded. I didn't invent anything. It's all public data, current photos, and of comparative metrics. If his firm built it right, he has nothing to fear. I sighed. You always think if you stand tall, you don't have to fear the wind. He looked at me with a grim smile. Standing tall is fine, but you still have to worry about someone bringing a chainsaw in the dead of night. I fell silent. Tom rarely spoke with such cynicism. It meant things were escalating. I wouldn't learn until the police investigation that David Thorne wasn't just losing a $4.5 million contract. His true nightmare was that if Tom's client report was officially signed and archived by the developers, that old, cracked foundation would be audited. An unstable foundation isn't just an engineering failure. It triggers banks that issued loans, material suppliers, insurance, companies, and the exposure of building inspectors who had been paid off under the table. Corrupt men don't fear the truth. They fear the truth being placed in the hands of a calm man who refuses to be bought. That night, as I sorted baby clothes, Tom received another call from Liam. I only heard Tom say, "No, do not remove the appendix. I'll take full responsibility." He listened for a long time, then replied, "If we know the part it risks and stay quiet, who takes the fall when the building collapses? The homebuyers?" I put down a washcloth and looked at my husband. He felt simultaneously incredibly close and miles away. Close because he was the man who reminded me to take my prenatal vitamins and rubbed my back. Far away because he was fighting a war I couldn't comprehend. "Is someone pressuring you?" I asked softly. He hesitated just for a fraction of a second, but enough to give him away. Just industry talk, don't worry about it. He told me not to worry, but his face looked like he was trying to calculate the load-bearing capacity of a 10-story building sinking into mud. He forced a laugh and ruffled my hair. "Look at my wife, using construction metaphors." I glared at him. "Live with an architect long enough, you learn a thing or two." He smiled, but his hands were ice cold. At that exact moment, in a place I wouldn't know about until much later, David Thorne was sitting in a black SUV parked in a hotel garage. On his phone screen was a photo of my surgical schedule. My name, Lakeside Memorial Hospital, my admission time, and the registered support person, Thomas Vance. That specific detail, read back to me by the police months later, made my blood run cold. A man I had met only once, a man I had never insulted or stolen from, was casually looking at the birth date of my child, like a calendar appointment. He needed to cancel. To him, I wasn't a mother. My baby wasn't a human being. We were just Tom's vulnerabilities. That night, Tom locked the project files in a separate desk drawer. He got into bed, wrapped his arm around my back, and rested his hand lightly on my belly. Our baby kicked. "Hey, buddy, Dad's here," Tom whispered. I closed my eyes, trying to keep my breathing even. Outside, the Chicago winter raged. Inside, our two mothers were still awake. And out there in the dark, someone was calculating exactly how to blindside the most careful man I knew. When I later read the police reports, I had to stop and stare for a long time at the section detailing how David Thorne approached Dr. Carter Neville. I don't know whether to call it calculated genius or pure, soulless evil. A man can lose a contract, lose money, lose face. But to go from a lost bid to plotting against a pregnant woman on an operating table, that man's soul was rotten to the core. Carter Neville was 44. He had once been a legitimate obstetrician at a suburban hospital. He had real skills, had stood in real operating rooms, and had patients look at him with absolute trust. But after a severe malpractice incident, his medical license was revoked. His career plummeted into a ravine, his family fell apart, and he was drowning in debt. People say poverty tests your morals. Neville failed the test. He started doing shady medical consulting, pushing black market prescriptions, and taking out high-interest loans from loan sharks. By the time Thorne found him, Neville owed over $30,000 to dangerous people. Debt collectors were banging on his door daily, and his ex-wife had fled, with their kids. Thorne didn't pick Neville at random. He needed someone with actual surgical knowledge who could walk into an OR without acting like a deer in headlights. He needed someone desperate enough to take a massive bribe. And he needed someone who, if caught, would look like a rogue, desperate addict, totally unconnected to a wealthy CEO. Their first meeting happened in a dimly lit diner off a quiet interstate exit. Thorne wore a dark coat and sunglasses, sitting with his back to the cameras. Neville arrived late, looking gaunt, his eyes sunken, his nervous fingers tracing the rim of his water glass. Thorne slid a thick envelope across the table, 50 grand up front. Neville stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. What do you need me to do? Thorne smirked. You used to do OB. You know how easily a C-section can get. Complicated. Neville looked up, a hungry glint in his eyes. Complicated how? You just want the surgery delayed, or do you want something more? Hearing that question read aloud by my lawyer later made my skin crawl. A man who used to wear a white coat was negotiating human life like he was haggling over produce at a flea market. Thorne didn't answer directly. He opened his phone, pulled up the photo of my surgery schedule, and set it on the table. I need this specific surgery to not end normally. A clean obstetrical complication. Nothing anyone can prove. Neville stared at the screen. What are the patient's existing risks? Breech, partial placenta previa, mild anemia. I had someone pull her file. Neville's lips twitched. The groundwork is already there for a plausible bleed out. If you pull it off, and I get what I need, another 150 grand goes into an offshore account, and I'll have someone arrange a quiet exit out of Illinois for you. Perhaps, in a fleeting second, whatever conscience Neville had left tried to surface, but it was too weak. It couldn't beat his debt, his greed, and his toxic self-pity, the belief that the world had screwed him over. So he had the right to screw the world back. He pocketed the envelope. I can't get into the sterile surgical wing without an insider. I already have one, Thorne replied. That insider was Tracy Hayes, the deputy surgical scheduling coordinator at Lakeside Memorial. Tracy was 38, wore her hair in a sharp bob, and had a habit of barking orders at nurses and orderlies. To most, she was a shrewd ladder climber, but shrewdness without ethics eventually turns into well-dressed cowardice. Tracy had been taking under-the-table kickbacks from a medical supply company, secretly owned by Thorne. It started as small thank-you envelopes for choosing their surgical gauze, then grew into a habit. And habits leave a paper trail. Thorne had kept the invoices, text messages, and photos of Tracy accepting cash at upscale steakhouses. When Thorne called her to a meeting, Tracy thought it was just routine business. Thorne tossed a thin folder of photos in front of her. Tracy went pale. Instantly. What do you want? Thorne poured his coffee, speaking casually. I need a surgical schedule. Scrambled. You don't have to touch a scalpel. You just need to alter the staff. Roster. Activate a temporary guest surgeon badge, and clear the path for my guy to walk into the surgical wing. Tracy gripped her purse. Are you insane? The surgical wing isn't a public park. You can't just wander in. Thorne smiled. You're right. That's why I need you. No. If this gets out, my career is over. Thorne looked up, his eyes dead. If the contents of that folder get out, do you? I think you have a career left to save? Tracy lost her voice. According to her later confession, she tried to delude herself into believing Thorne just wanted to delay the surgery to mess with Tom's head, forcing him to miss the contract signing. She told herself it was just corporate sabotage. No one would die. It's funny how people justify their sins by renaming them. Stealing becomes borrowing. Bribery becomes networking, and accessory to murder becomes corporate sabotage. But when Thorne gave her Carter Neville's name, Tracy knew exactly what was happening. She asked, Neville lost his license. Why are you sending an unlicensed hack into an OR? Your job is scheduling. Don't ask questions above your pay grade, Thorne. Snapped. Tracy's voice trembled. What if someone dies? Thorne set his coffee cup down, the porcelain clinking sharply. Then it's a tragic medical complication. A premium hospital like yours knows how to handle PR crises. She should have stopped right there. She should have called hospital, administration, the police, anyone. But she didn't. She thought about her promotion, the kickbacks she'd spent, her mortgage, her kids' private school, tuition. She thought about everything except the lives of me and my unborn child. Days before the surgery, Thorne's men quietly mapped Lakeside Memorial. They noted that the supply closet was right next to the hallway leading to OR 3. They learned that Dr. Locke had a meticulous habit of personally checking the oxygen lines and blood reserves before any high-risk surgery. They found a side service door near the locker rooms that had minimal foot traffic in the morning. They noted that the cameras inside the ORs didn't record full-room video due to HIPAA privacy rules, but the hallways and card readers did. Tracy provided the shift schedules. She knew Dr. Locke was my primary OB. She also knew Tom had been officially registered as my OR support person. That detail made Thorne pivot his plan. He didn't just want Tom to miss his contract signing. He wanted Tom to be trapped in that room, forced to watch his family slip away, dealing a psychological blow that would ruin him forever. Neville studied the OR blueprints. He asked detailed questions about the placement of the blue drape, where Tom would be sitting, and the distance from the head of the bed to the instrument trays. He memorized the surgical drug list, my blood type, the placenta previa notes. Reading this later made me physically sick. A total stranger was studying my pregnant body like a schematic for a booby trap. While I was at home folding tiny yellow onesies, worrying about whether breastfeeding would hurt or if my mom and mother-in-law would argue, criminals were plotting to ensure I never walked out of that hospital alive. The night before my admission, Tracy Hayes sat alone in the scheduling office. On her monitor was the roster. Beside her was an unactivated temp access badge. With a few clicks, Dr. Locke could be pushed off the primary slot. Carter. Neville could appear as a legitimate, last-minute substitution, fooling the floor staff for just enough time. She put her hand on the mouse, then pulled it back. Her phone buzzed. A text from Thorne. "Don't make me email the hospital board." Tracy closed her eyes. "They're probably just trying to scare him," she whispered to herself. Then, she activated the badge. There are doors in life that, once opened, can be closed again. But there are some doors where, if you crack them even an inch, what lies behind isn't a hallway, but a cliff. 2 days before the surgery, I woke up at 5 a.m. because the baby gave a massive kick. Chicago was still dark, a thin layer of fog pressing against the balcony glass. I lay on my side, my hand on my belly, listening to Tom shift beside me. He was a light sleeper. Just my soft sigh made him open his eyes. "Are you hurting?" "No, he's just kicking." Tom sat up and turned on the dim yellow nightlight. The glow caught the dark, circles under his eyes. For days, he had been juggling my hospital prep and his firm's massive project. My heart ached with guilt. "Go back to sleep, Tom. I'm okay." He reached out and rubbed my belly, his voice gravelly with sleep. "Listen, buddy, let your mom sleep. Once you're out here tomorrow, you can cause all the trouble you want." I giggled. "You talk to your unborn child like you're negotiating a union contract." He smiled, his hand incredibly gentle against my skin. "Some men aren't poets, but the way they touch their wives tells you everything you need to know about how deeply you are loved." Later that morning, while I was eating a bowl of Martha's homemade chicken soup, Tom's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, and his color drained. It happened so fast that if I wasn't his wife, I would have missed it. "Who texted?" I asked. He locked the screen and placed the phone face down. "Just spam." Martha, who was scooping more broth for me, chuckled. "Spam that makes you look like you just lost the deed to your house?" Tom forced a laugh. "Just stressing about work, Mom." Sitting across from him, my mother immediately dropped her spoon. "Work again." "Let me be clear, Tom. Do not be that guy staring at his phone while his wife is in labor. The worst thing for a birthing mother is a husband whose body is enclosing the room but his mind is at the office." Tom lowered his head respectfully. "Yes, Eleanor. I promise, when Lauren is admitted, I am fully with her." My mom frowned. "Words are cheap. Let's see the actions." Seeing the tension rising, I jumped in. "Mom, eat your soup." Martha made it from scratch. It's amazing. My mom eyed the bowl and muttered, "It's just soup. How amazing can it be?" Martha heard it, but she didn't argue. She just quietly slid the plate of crackers closer to my mom. "Have some, Eleanor. It warms the stomach." I looked at my mother-in-law. feeling a surge of affection and a wave of self-loathing. Once again, I chose silence. I acted like if I just ignored the simmering pot, it wouldn't boil over. After breakfast, Tom stepped out to the balcony to make a call. I couldn't hear everything, but I caught fragments. Gabe, I'm sending you something. Save it. If anything weird happens in the next couple of days, you'll know where to look. I sat on the bed, folding a tiny yellow onesie, my heart racing. Gabe Miller was Tom's college buddy, now a bulldog corporate lawyer. Usually when they talked, it was full of laughs and banter. But Tom's voice was deadly serious. When he came back in, I confronted him. Are you hiding something from me? Tom stood in the doorway, staring at me. He was a terrible liar. Whenever he hid something, he would hold eye contact just a second too long, trying to calculate the least painful version of the truth. It's nothing major, just some erratic messages about the project. What did they say? He walked over, sat next to me, and took the tiny onesie from my trembling hands, folding it perfectly. You're about to have surgery. Let me handle the noise. I grabbed his arm. Tom, I'm your wife. I don't want you carrying everything alone. He let out a slow breath. I know, but right now, your only job is to sleep, eat, and walk into that ore with a calm heart. I will not let outside garbage scare you. When you say it like that, it scares me more. He went quiet. Then he unlocked his phone and flashed the screen at me just long enough for me to read one line. When your wife gets on the table tomorrow, you better choose your family over your project. I felt ice in my veins. Is that a threat? He locked the phone. Probably just intimidation. But they specifically mentioned you on the table. That's why I sent it to Gabe. I also just called a hospital to double-check the surgery schedule. And Dr. Locke is still the primary. The schedule hasn't moved. Your file is correct. Hearing Dr. Locke's name brought me a tiny shred of comfort. Dr. Locke was a steady, calm presence. He always explained things slowly so I could understand. He had personally briefed Tom about the OR rules. Sit at the head, don't cross. The blue drape, don't touch the instruments. Tom had literally written it down in a notebook. I had teased him. Are you trying to get certified as an OR? Nurse? He had replied deadpan. No, but failing this test isn't an option. I wasn't laughing now. By noon, Tom called the hospital again, this time putting it on speaker. The maternity ward receptionist confirmed my name, admission time, Dr. Locke as the primary, and Tom as the approved support person. Tom asked deliberately, if there is any sudden change in the primary surgeon, how is the family notified? The receptionist answered cheerily, oh, if there's a last-minute emergency. Shift change. The charge nurse will inform you directly, and it will be updated in your chart. You can always ask the floor nurses to verify. Thank you. My wife has partial placenta previa. I need everything strictly by the book. My mom, overhearing this, shook her head. You are so paranoid, Tom. This hospital delivers hundreds of babies. Yours isn't the only one. This time, Martha spoke up before I could. Her voice was soft, but firmer than usual. Eleanor, my daughter-in-law is going into surgery. Tom being careful is a good thing. You can never be too careful when it comes to life. My mom looked stunned. She clearly hadn't expected the quiet countrywoman to push back. She gave a cold laugh. I just worry that hyperfixating creates unnecessary panic. Martha set down her dishcloth. Panic can be fixed. Arrogance sometimes can't. The room went dead silent. I looked down, a strange warmth blooming in my chest. For the first time, my mother-in-law wasn't just being passive. She was standing up for my safety in her own simple, unshakable way. That afternoon, Tom printed an extra copy of my entire medical file. He saved it to a USB drive, his phone, and his email. He handed the USB to me. I'm putting this in the front pocket of your hospital bag. You don't need to do anything with it. Just know it's there. Do you really think something is going to happen? I asked, my voice shaking. He knelt in front of me, holding both my hands. I pray to God it doesn't. But if someone wants us panicked, we have to be prepared. Better safe than sorry. Tears spilled down my cheeks. I just want a normal birth. He pulled me into his arms. I know, and I'll do whatever it takes to keep it that way. The next morning, we arrived at Lakeside Memorial, while a layer of winter fog still clung to the city. The streets were empty, but the hospital entrance was glowing with bright lights. Everyone walking through those doors carried their own silent burdens. Some clutched baby bags, others held lab results, some sat on benches staring blankly at their phones. I stepped out of the car, my belly weighing me down, holding onto the car door. Tom was instantly at my side. Slow down. I tried to smile. I'm not exactly running a marathon. He looked at my swollen feet. Your ankles are huge. Don't push it. My mom walked behind us, pulling a small designer suitcase, already complaining. For what they charge here, the valet should bring the car right to the curb. We shouldn't have to walk in this wind. Tom glanced back. I'll take Lauren inside first, Eleanor. I'll come back for the bags. She didn't reply, just looked around the lobby as if assessing whether the marble floors were worth the premium price tag. Martha, however, was quietly hugging her tote bag, her graying hair blowing in the freezing wind. She didn't complain. She just looked at me. Are you having cramps, Lauren? Just a little pressure, Mom. She nodded, tightening her grip on her bag. Let's get inside. The wind will make you sick. My mom chimed in. The hospital is climate controlled, Martha. You don't need to act like we're in a barn. Martha stayed silent. I turned away, pretending to adjust my scarf, because if I looked at them any longer, I might have screamed and shattered the whole. Morning. The maternity and surgical wing was on the 6th floor. The hallways were immaculately clean, smelling of cold floor wax and antiseptics. Photos of rosy-cheeked, sleeping infants lined the walls, projecting peace. I felt zero peace. Every step brought me closer to that blue drape. The doctor had said, "You'll lie behind it. You'll hear the instruments. You won't see what's happening to you." Tom handled the paperwork at the front desk. He laid out everything in order. IDs, surgery orders, lab results, ultrasounds, blood type cards, allergy lists. The admissions clerk smiled at him. You are very thorough, Dad. It's my wife's first baby. I want no ambiguity, Tom replied. My mom sighed loudly. He's always like this. Let's just hope he doesn't annoy the surgeons with a million questions. I snapped. Mom, please. Tom didn't take the bait. He just asked the clerk, Dr. Harrison Locke is still the primary surgeon today, correct? She checked her screen. Yes, Dr. Locke is your primary. Lauren is scheduled for prep at 8:40 a.m. You are Thomas Vance, the registered support person? Yes. Great. You'll be given sterile scrubs when the nurse calls you back. You are only permitted to sit at the head of the bed. You cannot cross the sterile line. I understand, Tom said. We were led to a pre-op holding room. It had 2 beds separated by a beige curtain and a window overlooking a small courtyard. I changed into the hospital gown and sat on the bed. The oversized fabric made me feel strangely vulnerable, like I was no longer a person, just a patient. Martha pulled a clean washcloth from her bag to wipe the sweat from my forehead. My mom immediately intervened. Martha, the hospital uses sterilized linens. Don't use outside rags in here. Martha's hand froze. I quickly grabbed the cloth from her. It's fine, Mom. I'll just use it for my hands. Martha gave me a small, appreciative smile that hurt my heart more than any reprimand. Around 8 a.m., a young nurse walked in. Her badge read Haley Mills. She was petite, with kind eyes but a slightly rushed demeanor. Lauren Vance? Yes. Hi, I'm Haley. I'll be taking you back to prep. Only one registered support. A person can come to the surgical corridor. Thomas will change into scrubs. Shortly. Tom stood up instantly, grabbing his binder. My mom stood up too. Can I come? I'm her mother. Haley spoke politely. I'm sorry, ma'am. Only the registered partner is allowed. Past the double doors. You can wait in the family lounge. My mom scowled. I am her biological mother. I understand, but it's strict hospital policy. Tom helped me off the bed. My mom looked at him, her tone sharp. When you get in there, keep your cool. They are professionals. Don't question every little thing and make Lauren panic. Tom looked at her, his voice respectful but firm. I'm just going to sit by her. Head, Eleanor. But if something doesn't look right, I will ask. See? That's exactly what I'm afraid of. This time, Martha spoke up. He asks because he cares. Having her husband alert will make Lauren feel safer. My mom glared at Martha, her lips pressed into a tight line. The room felt suffocating. I squeezed Tom's hand. Let's just go. The walk from holding to the pre-op corridor wasn't long, but it felt like miles. The deeper we went, the quieter it got. The squeak of rubber soles, the clatter of metal carts, the overhead pages, it all merged with the pounding of my heart. At the corridor doors, Nurse Haley had me sit in a wheelchair to check my Leckett. Wristband. Lauren, let's verify. Lauren Vance, DOB 1987. Scheduled C-section. Breech presentation, partial placenta previa. Correct? Yes. Tom leaned over to look at Haley's clipboard. Dr. Locke is the primary surgeon, right? Haley looked up, pausing for a fraction of a second. Let me just verify on the digital board. That tiny pause didn't escape Tom. It didn't escape me either, because I felt his hand tighten around mine. On the wall ahead was an electronic schedule board. I followed Tom's gaze. My slot lit up. Lauren Vance, or 3, primary. Dr. Harrison Locke in white text on a quote. Blue background. I let out a breath of relief. But then, the screen blinked. Dr. Locke's name vanished. It was replaced by a name I didn't recognize. Dr. Carter Neville. Before I could process it, Tom stepped forward. Haley, why did the primary surgeon change? Haley looked at the board, her face paling slightly. The system might have done a last-minute update. Let me call scheduling. Tom's voice sharpened. Why was it changed without notifying the family? Haley swallowed hard. Just wait one moment, sir. Right then, an older woman in teal scrubs walked briskly down the hall. She was short, but had an authoritative posture, her hair tucked neatly beneath a surgical cap. Her badge read Sarah Jenkins, charge nurse. She had the piercing eyes of a veteran who didn't tolerate nonsense. She glanced at the digital board, then at Haley. Haley, this is Locke's case. Haley stammered, I just saw it change. Nurse Jenkins frowned. It wasn't the annoyed frown of someone dealing with a computer glitch. It was the frown of someone who smelled smoke before seeing the fire. Tom turned to her. Ma'am, my wife has been with Dr. Locke since her third Prue's trimester. If you're swapping surgeons, my family demands an explanation. Jenkins looked at Tom, then at me. Her voice was slow and grounding. Stay right. Here with your wife. Keep her calm. She then leaned into Haley, lowering her voice, but I heard every word. Run a cross-check on that provider's credential. ID in the secondary system right now. Do not ask scheduling. Haley gulped. Yes, ma'am. I remember the squeak of the wheelchair as Haley finally pushed me into the plating, final prep area. The hallway was lined with closed doors, red lights, and the casto, overwhelming scent of sterile iodine. I wanted to stand up. I wanted to say I wouldn't do it without Dr. Locke, but my belly was so heavy, my legs were shaking, and my throat was completely dry. It's a terrifying phenomenon. As a pregnant woman, you know you have the right to ask questions, to stop the process, but the moment they put you in that gown, you feel as helpless as a child. Tom leaned down, his lips practically touching my ear. Lauren, I am right here. Nobody touches you without me knowing exactly what they are doing. I nodded, but tears were leaking out of the corners of my eyes. Meanwhile, down another hallway, Dr. Harrison Locke had no idea his name had been wiped from the board. I learned later from the police report that I'd been in his office reviewing my chart when a hospital maintenance worker rushed in, claiming there was a critical oxygen pressure error in the supply closet next to OR3. Because my surgery had a higher risk of hemorrhage due to the placenta previa, Dr. Locke immediately went to check it himself. He told his attending nurse, I'll be right back. Do not let them change the staff on this case without my verbal go-ahead. That sentence breaks my heart now. The man trying to keep me safe was lured away by a fake technical glitch. The supply closet was tucked behind a blind corner. When Dr. Locke walked in, the lights were on. Metal racks were stacked with gloves, masks, and IV bags. He bent down to check the digital valve monitor. Behind him, the door clicked shut. A harsh chemical smell hit his nose. Before he could shout, a rag soaked in. Chloroform was slammed over his face. He fought, knocking over a box of saline, bags, but 2 men pinned him down. The dose wasn't enough to induce deep coma, but it left him dizzy, paralyzed, and disoriented. They zip-tied his wrists, took his phone, and dragged him behind a shelving unit. One of the men muttered, "Hurry up. We need to open the service door." The other replied, "The temp badge is active." Tracy triggered it right on time. The closet door shut softly. To me, lying oblivious in the prep room, it was the sound of my safety net being violently cut. Inside OR3, I was moved onto the operating table. I was shivering, uncontrollably. A nurse hooked up the blood pressure cuff. Another verified my wristband. The massive surgical lights overhead made everything look stark and alien. Tom had changed into his sterile scrubs, baggy pants, a gown, a hairnet, and a mask. Only his eyes were visible. He sat exactly where he was told, at the head of my bed, strictly behind the sterile line. The blue drape hadn't been fully erected yet. I saw charge Nurse Jenkins standing near the instrument trays. Nurse Haley walked back in holding an iPad, her face devoid of color. She looked at Jenkins and mouthed a sentence without making a sound. The ID code doesn't match. He's not an active provider in the secondary registry. Jenkins closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Just one. When she opened them, she looked terrifyingly calm. "Do not panic the patient. Watch every single move," she mouthed back. I saw it. Tom saw it. His hand gripped mine so hard it almost hurt. Just then, a man in surgical scrubs walked into the room. He was tall, gaunt, and his mask covered most of his face. His ID badge was partially obscured by the one annele, his surgical gown, showing only the name Neville. He walked with the arrogant swagger of someone who believed he owned the room. A fake scrub tech walked in behind him, announcing, "Dr. Neville is stepping in." Jenkins glared at him. "Where is Dr. Locke?" Neville didn't look her in the eye. "Chief of surgery had an emergency. I'm covering." Jenkins pressed harder. "This patient has partial placenta previa. Have you verified the exact location on the imaging?" Neville snapped his gloves on. "I read the file. Do your job, nurse, and let me do mine." The moment those words hung in the air, the entire atmosphere of the OR plummeted. Nurse Haley looked down. Another scrub nurse threw a nervous glance at Jenkins. Tom stared at Neville without blinking. I didn't understand the deep medical jargon, but I understood human behavior. Dr. Locke never spoke to his team like that. He verified every single step out loud. "Tom," I whispered. He leaned down instantly. "I'm here. I'm right here. Don't be scared. Look at me. Breathe with me. Nobody is doing anything wrong yet." The anesthesiologist explained the spinal block. I had to sit up, curling my spine like a shrimp. My belly felt impossibly heavy. My breath caught in my throat. The needle pierced my lower back. A rush of icy cold shot down my spine, spreading quickly into my legs. Behind me, Jenkins spoke loudly, confirming patient blood type. Neville gave a curt reply. "It's in the chart. Standard protocol is verbal confirmation, doctor," Jenkins fired back, unyielding. Neville paused for a few agonizing seconds, then rattled off my blood type. But those few seconds of hesitation made Tom lean slightly to the side, peering past and the drape. He knew he couldn't cross the line. He couldn't stand up and start a planet fight. But I knew his brain was recording every word, every twitch, every violation of protocol. The blue drape was hoisted up across my chest. From that moment, my lower half disappeared from my reality. I was cut in two. My top half was terrified, shivering, listening to the rhythmic beep of the heart monitor. My bottom half was numb, heavy, and belonged to someone else. Behind that blue wall lay my abdomen, my baby, the scalpels, and the hands of strangers I was forced to trust. On my side of the wall, there was only Tom. His face hovered inches from mine. "Just look at me, Lauren. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Good." Every time I inhaled, the smell of iodine burned the back of my throat. "Are you still there?" I whimpered. "I'm not going anywhere," Tom promised. Behind the drape, Neville's voice barked. "Scalpel." The clink of metal against a tray sent a shiver through my teeth. Jenkins immediately interrupted. "Doctor, have you cross-referenced the hemorrhage risk notes on the pre-op sheet?" Neville's breathing grew heavy. "I saw it. I am operating, Nurse Jenkins. Because you are operating, I need verbal confirmation." Tom's thumb stroked the back of my hand. He was trying to keep me calm, but his own hand was freezing. Out in the waiting room, as my mom told me later, Tracy Hayes walked out, flashing a practiced sympathetic smile. Everything is going smoothly. There was a minor personnel shift because Dr. Locke had an emergency, but the team is highly qualified. My mom immediately asked, "What do you mean shift? Does Tom know?" Tracy chuckled softly. "Your son-in-law is just a bit high-strung, ma'am. Husbands get very anxious in the OR." That comment hit my mother's exact bias. I knew it, she thought. Tom is making a scene. Only Martha sat silently in the corner, clutching her rosary beads inside her coat pocket, whispering prayers for our safety. Inside the OR, Nurse Haley walked back toward the head of the bed. She looked at Jenkins and shook her head slightly. Tom saw it. I saw it. The knot in my throat tightened so much I felt I was suffocating. Jenkins stepped closer to the sterile instrument tray. "Haley, stand next to me. Every single medication administered must be verbally called out by name and dosage." Neville growled. "Are you questioning my authority?" "I am protecting the patient," Jenkins replied, her voice like steel. "If you're doing your job right, you have nothing to worry about." That sentence terrified me. I knew something evil was happening behind that blue drape. It was so close that one wrong move meant my baby and I would never wake up. Suddenly, a surgical tech announced, "I see the head." Tears burst from my eyes. Tom leaned down, his voice cracking. "He's coming. Lauren, our boy is coming." I cried and smiled at the same time, feeling like I had been pulled from the edge of a cliff. But the joy lasted exactly 3 seconds. Behind the drape, Jenkins' voice cracked like a whip. "Doctor, what are you grabbing?" No one answered. Tom's eyes widened. Behind the drape, a hand had slipped toward a secondary supply pouch, a place where no active medications should have been, stored without prior clearing. If Jenkins hadn't demanded verbal confirmation of all drugs, I wouldn't have known, but I saw Tom's eyes change. There are moments in life when you don't need to hear the whole sentence. You just look at the person you love and know disaster has arrived. The look in Tom's eyes wasn't just fear. It was the razor-sharp focus of a man watching a tripwire snap. "Doctor, what is in your hand? Read the label aloud," Jenkins demanded. Neville answered far too quickly. "Uterine contractant. Stop interrupting me," Jenkins yelled. "The Pitocin is already loaded on the primary tray. Put down whatever you took from your pocket." I heard metal clatter loudly. Someone gasped. Nurse Haley, standing near the tray, burst into tears. "Doctor, that vial isn't on the approved surgical manifest." Tom shot up from his stool. The stool crashed backward onto the linoleum floor with a violent bang. That sound stopped my heart. Tom yelled in a voice I had never heard in my life, a raw, guttural roar. "Drop it. Where the hell is Dr. Locke? What are you trying to inject into my wife?" No one answered. I lay paralyzed on the table. My abdomen was literally cut open. Tears streamed down into my ears. I wanted to sit up. I wanted to cover my belly with my hands. I wanted to run, but I couldn't move. The absolute horror of being physically helpless while someone tries to kill you is indescribable. I could only choke out his name, Tom. He dropped instantly back to his knees, pressing his face next to mine, grabbing my hand with both of his. "I'm right here. Look at me. Do not close your eyes." Behind the drape, Jenkins was unyielding. "Haley, secure that tray. Nobody pushes anything into her IV without my explicit visual confirmation." Neville roared. "You people are insane. You're endangering the patient." "You are the danger," Jenkins shouted back. That was the breaking point. Neville knew his cover was blown. I couldn't see his face, but I heard the panic in his heavy breathing, the frantic shuffle of his clogs backing away. He slammed into the Mayo stand. A terrifying crash of stainless steel echoed as scalpels, forceps, retractors, and clamps rained down onto the floor. "Electrical fire!" Neville screamed at the top of his lungs. "Everybody out!" The fake scrub tech, later identified as Thorne's hired muscle, Luke Verng, lunged for the side service door. Neville bolted right behind him. Jenkins screamed, "Nobody leaves this room! Hit the code blue!" The emergency alarm was slammed. Flashing red lights pulsed above the OR doors, accompanied by a deafening, rhythmic siren. But Neville and his accomplice were already out the service door, disappearing into the back corridors. Tom's reflex was to chase them. I felt his hand slip from mine for half a second, It felt like an eternity. "Tom, don't leave me," I sobbed hysterically. He froze. I don't know what went through his mind in that split second. Catch, the man who tried to murder his family, or stay with his wife lying cut open on a table with a baby half delivered? If he chased him, he might catch a killer. If he stayed, he kept me from losing my mind. He spun back around, dropping to the floor next to my head, ignoring the blaring alarms, ignoring Jenkins shouting into the intercom, ignoring the chaos. "Lauren, look at me." "The baby. Our baby," I choked out. His eyes were bloodshot, his jaw clenched so hard it trembled. "He's coming out. You are safe. I am right here. No one will ever touch you again." Behind the drape, Jenkins was barking orders like a battlefield commander. "Get the attending OB in here. Now. Secure her airway. Check her vitals." She turned. To Haley. "Haley, stand up. Stop crying. This mother and baby need you right now." Haley hiccuped, wiping her tears with her sleeve. I'm here." That is when I understood what true courage is. Courage isn't the absence of fear. Courage is crying in terror while still doing your damn job. Tom pressed his forehead against mine. "Breathe with me. In, out, good." I followed him like a robot. Every breath hurt. The pain wasn't from the drain. Incision. It was from the sheer terror that my baby was inches from the light, but had almost been dragged into the dark. "Do not touch that dropped vial," Jenkins yelled to the room. "Bag it. Treat it as a crime scene." Another nurse's voice wavered. "Sarah." The baby's head. "I see it. Stay calm. The mother is stable. The baby has a heartbeat. We save them first." That sentence anchored me to life. I squeezed Tom's hand. "Don't let go." He looked at me, his words hitting the cold floor like an oath. "Never." The code blue alarm was a sound I will never forget. It wasn't a blaring siren, but an urgent, repeating electronic pulse. Every flash of the red strobe light was a reminder that my life was hanging by a thread. The OR doors banged open, and a rush of surgical staff flooded in. Leading them was a senior attending OB, a man in his 40s with a deep, no-nonsense voice. "Status," he barked. "BP is fluctuating but manageable. Baby is crowning." Jenkins fired back. Rapidly, primary surgeon absent. Imposter entered under fake ID Carter Neville. Brought unapproved narcotic, paralytic to the tray. Suspect fled via service. Corridor. The attending didn't ask a single useless question. He stepped right up to the table. "I'm taking over. Verify instruments are clean. Count the sponges, any. New meds go through me directly." "Copy that," Jenkins said. Hearing a competent doctor reestablish standard protocol, I burst into fresh tears. I hadn't realized how terrifying it was to be suspended in a room full of wrongness until the rightness returned. Tom leaned in. "Did you hear that? A real doctor is here. Hold on just a little. Longer. Is he out yet?" I wheezed. "He's almost here," Tom choked out. Out in the hallway, chaos erupted. Radios crackled. Security guards yelled to lock down the stairwells and check the exits. But all that noise faded away. In my world, there was only the beep of the monitor, Jenkins counting tools, the new doctor giving orders, and Tom whispering my name. A nurse ran into the room. They found Dr. Locke in the supply closet. He's zip-tied and groggy from chloroform. "Can he scrub in?" the attending asked. "No, he's requesting medical clearance. He was incapacitated." I closed my eyes. Dr. Locke didn't abandon me. He didn't have a sudden emergency. He was locked in a closet while I was handed over to a butcher. "Lauren, open your eyes," Tom commanded, his voice rough. I forced them open. Dr. Locke was found. "This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't your fault." I didn't understand why he said that until later. He knew I was already blaming myself for choosing this hospital, for trusting the nurses, for not screaming when the schedule changed. Women do that. We get victimized and immediately ask what we did wrong. Behind the drape, the attending said, "Ready for delivery. Gentle pressure." My whole body tensed. I didn't feel sharp pain, just an intense, bizarre tugging. Sensation deep in my torso. My heart hammered against my ribs. Tom leaned closer, his eyes wet. "He's here, Lauren. You did it." And then, a cry. It wasn't a loud wail at first. It was a sputter, a wet cough, as if the baby was shocked to enter such a loud, terrifying world. But seconds later, the cry erupted strong, furious, and piercing right through the mechanical hum of the Gotterobai. Monitors and the fading code blue alarm. I sobbed. "He's crying, Tom, he's crying." Tom slumped forward, burying his face into my shoulder, his broad back shaking. The man who had held it together, who had calculated every risk, who hadn't broken focus once, finally let out a ragged, agonizing sob. "He's crying, baby. Our boy is here." I didn't get to see him right away. The pediatric team whisked him to the plunge warming table to check his vitals because of the severe distress in the room. I only caught a glimpse of a white towel and a tiny, flailing purple arm. Apgar looks good, strong reflexes. Moving to respiratory check, a pediatric nurse called out. Jenkins raised her voice. "Document the exact time of delivery. Document the exact time the code blue was pulled." Her voice was professional, but I heard the slight tremor in it. She had just walked through the valley of the shadow of death with us. The surgery wasn't over. I still had to be stitched up and monitored for bleeding. "Can I stay?" Tom asked the attending. The doctor looked at him. "Stay in your seat, don't interfere." "I'm not leaving my wife," Tom said. No one argued. Jenkins ordered a nurse to bag the unlabeled vial in an evidence pouch. "Do not touch the drop tray. Save the monitor data. Pull the card reader logs, the hallway cameras, the digital schedule history. Nobody deletes a damn thing." A tech murmured. "Sarah, the camera inside this OR glitched and dropped. Signal." Jenkins whipped her head around. "For how long?" "About 19 minutes. Jenkins let out a cold, dark laugh. 19 minutes. Exactly when an imposter walks in. How convenient. But the door logs work, the hallway cameras work, the system, audit trail works. You can turn off one camera, but you can't hide a fire once. The house is burning." Hearing that, despite my exhaustion, my heart warmed. In a room that had almost become my tomb, someone was aggressively protecting the truth. When they finally wheeled me to the PACU, post-anesthesia care unit, the fluorescent ceiling lights rolled by in a blur. Tom walked right beside the bling. Gurney, his hand resting on my shoulder as if afraid I'd evaporate. I wanted to tell him so much, but the pain meds and adrenaline crash were pulling me under. Before I faded out, I heard my mother's panicked voice in the hallway. "How is she? Where is my grandson? Why did the alarms go off? Somebody tell me." A nurse replied softly, "The mother and baby are stable now, but there was a very serious situation." "Situation?" My mom gasped, bursting into tears. I heard someone help her to a chair. Through the haze, I saw Martha standing quietly by the wall. She wasn't screaming or demanding answers. She just had her hands clasped tightly against her chest, whispering, "Thank you, God, thank you." As I drifted into unconsciousness, the sound that stayed with me wasn't the alarms or the shouting. It was my son's first cry. That cry didn't just mean he was alive. It was a lifeline that pulled me, Tom, and our two mothers back from an abyss so deep that, had we fallen in, none of us would have ever survived. When I finally woke up in the recovery room, the world was obscured by a foggy haze. My throat felt like sandpaper, and a deep burning weight anchored my slashin' lower abdomen. I heard the rhythmic beeping of the vitals monitor, then Tom's voice. "Lauren, can you hear me?" I blinked. His face came into focus. He looked terrible, his hair was matted with sweat, his mask was pulled down around his neck, and his eyes were so bloodshot, they looked bruised. "Baby," I croaked. He leaned in, his voice raspy. "He's okay. He's in the nursery under observation. He's perfect, Lauren." I gave a weak nod. Just knowing my son was safe pulled me back to reality. The door opened, and my mom practically sprinted in. Eleanor Higgins had lost all her polished, upper-middle-class composure. Her hair was a mess, her eyes swollen, her expensive cashmere wrap hanging haphazardly off one shoulder. "Lauren, oh my God." She stood by the bed, taking in my pale face, the IV lines, the sheer exhaustion radiating from me. She looked at Tom, who hadn't moved from my side. Her voice was a breathless whisper. "My grandson." "Where is my grandson?" "He's in the nursery. The pediatricians are running extra checks because of the trauma in the OR. But he's stable," Tom answered quietly. My mom's face went white. "They told me outside. They said a fake doctor got Is it true? Tom hesitated, clearly trying to figure out how much to tell me without spiking. My heart rate. Dr. Locke was ambushed and locked in a closet. A man who wasn't on the roster took his place. Nurse Jenkins realized he was trying to push an unapproved drug. The hospital locked down the scene and called the police. My mom stumbled backward, catching herself on a chair. My God. Martha walked in right behind her. Unlike my mom, she didn't rush the bed. She stood at the foot of it, staring at me for a long time. Her weathered eyes were red, but she was incredibly calm. She set down her canvas bag, clasped her hands, and bowed her head. Thank the Lord you're still here. She walked over and gently stroked the back of my hand, avoiding the IV tape. If you need to cry, Lauren, you cry. Don't hold it in. I'm right here. Tears instantly spilled over my eyelashes. I couldn't even sob aloud. The tears just flowed silently down my temples. Tom quickly grabbed a tissue and dabbed my face. My mom watched this interaction. For the first time, the look in her eyes wasn't jealousy or judgment. It was profound shame. Martha turned to my mom, speaking in a very soft voice. It's a good thing Tom was in that room with her. Eleanor, isn't it? There was no malice in her voice. No, I told you so. But precisely because it was said so gently, it hit harder than a slap. My mom dropped her gaze, her manicured nails digging into her palms. I knew exactly what was playing on a loop in her head. You're awfully intense about this, Tom. You'll just be a nuisance. Keep your cool. Don't question every little thing. Words she had tossed out so casually were now choking her. Tom didn't dwell on it. He turned to the floor nurse. When can I see my son? The pediatrician will come update you shortly, Mr. Vance, the nurse replied. What else are you monitoring on my wife? Blood pressure, incision site bleeding, and any residual effects from the priest. Anesthesia. She's doing well. Tom nodded, his voice hardening. I need you to document the exact timeline in her chart. From the moment the code blue was pulled to the moment she left the Grange. Or, I need certified copies of everything. The nurse shifted uncomfortably. Sir, you'll have to request that through medical records. Then, page the head of medical records to this room right now. Tom wasn't shouting, but the diplomatic, accommodating son-in-law was gone. He was drawing a line in the sand. About 10 minutes later, a man in a sharp gray suit walked into the room, accompanied by a female hospital administrator. He introduced himself as the Director of Risk Management for Lakeside Memorial. He wore a practiced expression serious enough to show concern, but carefully blank enough to admit zero legal liability. First of all, Lakeside Memorial extends our deepest sympathies to your family regarding the severe protocol deviation that occurred during your wife's surgery. I was exhausted, but the phrase severe protocol deviation woke me right up. It sounded so sterile, like someone forgot to sign a form or double-booked a conference room. They were trying to wrap an attempted murder in corporate HR. Speak. Tom stood up. You call what just happened a protocol deviation? The risk director kept his voice soothing. Mr. Vance, we are conducting a rigorous internal review. We cannot draw conclusions until all facts are faxilid. Gathered. Dr. Locke was assaulted and locked in a closet. Tom fired back. An unidentified man bypassed your security with an active badge. He tried to inject an unlabeled narcotic into my wife's fore. Your OR cameras mysteriously went black for 19 minutes. My wife was cut open on a table. Do not call that a protocol deviation. The room grew suffocatingly tense. My mom looked up at Tom, utterly shocked. Perhaps this was the first time she realized that the man she thought lacked a foundation was the only one in the room acting like a reinforced concrete pillar. Martha stood behind Tom, placing a quiet hand on his shoulder, silently, telling him to hold his ground. The risk director cleared his throat. We understand emotions are high. Please, rest assured, the hospital will provide the best possible support for Mrs. Vance. What kind of support? My mom asked, her voice shaking. My daughter almost died. My grandson was almost killed. Spell it out. The administrator stepped forward, smiling tightly. Ma'am, we are highly empathetic to your distress. As an immediate courtesy, Lakeside Memorial is prepared to waive all medical bills associated with this birth. We will also Upgrade Mrs. Vance to our premium VIP postpartum suite and provide a dedicated 24/7 private nurse, fully complimentary. I lay there, my eyelids heavy, but anger flared in my chest like a struck match. Waive the bills, VIP suite. They sounded like a restaurant comping a dessert, because they brought out the wrong steak. Martha gripped her purse strap, her jaw tight. She didn't understand corporate legalities, but she recognized hush money when she saw it. And in exchange for this? Tom asked. The director raised his hands defensively. There is no exchange, Mr. Vance. We simply ask for your family's cooperation. We request that you refrain from discussing unverified details with external parties or the press, as it could cause unnecessary public panic while our internal review is ongoing. Tom let out a dry, humorless laugh. My wife was on an operating table. The primary surgeon was incapacitated. An imposter walked in, and you're worried. About bad PR? The female administrator interjected. Please try to understand. If rumors spread, it damages the hospital's reputation, which makes our internal investigation much harder to conduct objectively. An internal investigation doesn't replace a police detective, Tom said, his voice dropping to a deadly calm. The hospital reps froze. They realized they weren't dealing with a panicked family they could buy off with a free private room. I tried to move my hand. Searing pain shot through my abdomen, but I grabbed Tom's sleeve. He leaned down instantly. What do you need? Let me speak, I rasped. Lauren, you're too weak. Let me speak, I repeated. If I didn't say it now, I would hate myself forever. Tom propped me up slightly, holding a cup of water with a straw to my lips. I took a sip. My mom stepped forward. Lauren, just rest. Let the men handle this. I looked at my mother. For the first time in my life, I didn't yield to her. Mom, this is my body. This is my baby. She stopped, her eyes welling up with tears, and stepped back. I looked at the risk director. The room was spinning slightly, but I forced my gaze to lock onto his. You said the hospital sympathizes with us. He nodded eagerly. Yes, Mrs. Vance. Deeply. I gave a weak, painful laugh. If my baby and I had died on that table, would you still call it a protocol deviation? Or would you have just called it a tragic maternal hemorrhage? The director went pale. The female administrator looked down at her clipboard. In the silence, I heard my mother-in-law choke back a sob. My own mother covered her mouth, crying openly. She was finally realizing how close she had come to losing me, and how violently she had underestimated the danger. I don't want your VIP room, I said, every word costing me energy. I don't. I want you to waive my bill so you can write in my file that the family accepted a settlement. I want to know who walked into that room, who gave him the badge, who shut off the cameras, and who paid them to do it. Mrs. Vance, those things take time to verify. Then verify it with the Chicago Police Department, Tom interrupted. The director closed his mouth. He knew they had lost. 30 minutes later, Gabe Miller arrived. Tom's lawyer friend strode into the room wearing a sharp suit, his forehead beaded with sweat from sprinting from the parking garage. He didn't waste time with pleasantries. Tom, I have your text logs and the backup files you sent me, Gabe said. I also have the timestamped screenshots of the original surgical schedule. Gabe immediately demanded the hospital draft a preliminary incident report on the spot. He dictated the terms. They had to formally acknowledge Dr. Locke was found bound in a closet, that Carter Neville was an unauthorized imposter, that charge nurse Jenkins intercepted an unlabeled narcotic, and that the OR camera feed was interrupted for exactly 19 minutes. He demanded preservation of all server logs, badge swipes, and hallway security footage. The risk director looked furious. Mr. Miller, you are demanding highly sensitive internal data. Gabe didn't blink. When an unauthorized individual attempts a lethal injection on a patient, your data stops being an HR issue and becomes evidence in an HR attempted homicide. Preserve it, or I'll have a judge issue a spoliation order. Before you finish your lunch. Martha stepped forward, pointing a finger at the hospital reps. You do exactly what the lawyer says. We might not have millions of dollars, but you aren't going to sweep my daughter-in-law's life under the rug. My mom looked at Martha, stunned by her bravery, then quietly muttered, We are going to the police. You can't just wipe your hands clean of this. Before the hospital reps could argue further, a hospital security guard burst into the room, looking frantic. He whispered something to the risk director. Tom caught it. What is it? The guard looked at Tom, then at Gabe. The Chicago PD just called. They picked up Carter Neville at a motel near O'Hare Airport. He's in custody. I closed my eyes, my heart pounding against my ribs. The man holding the syringe had been caught, but I knew a disgraced doctor didn't orchestrate this alone. Someone gave him the money. Someone gave him the badge. Someone wanted my family destroyed, and I was going to make sure every single one of them paid. While I lay immobile in the hospital bed, the news of Carter Neville's arrest broke behind closed doors. I didn't see his face when the cop slapped the cuffs on him, but just hearing his name made me shiver. Tom stood by the door, listening to Gabe on the phone. Tom had put it on speaker, at a low volume. They got him? Tom asked. Yeah. Gabe's voice crackled. He was waiting for a burner car to take him out of state. Listen to me, Tom. Do not let anyone from the hospital's legal team. I'm speak to you without me present. I'm heading to the precinct now. Tom hung up and turned back to the room. My mom and Martha were both on their feet. They caught the fake doctor? My mom asked. Tom nodded. They caught him at a motel. He was trying to run. Martha clutched her chest. Lord have mercy. How can someone do something so evil and just try to slip away? I forced my voice out. Did he confess to anything, Tom? Tom walked over, pulling the blanket up to my chest. Don't stress yourself out, Lauren. I stared right into his eyes. Don't tell me not to stress. I was the one on the busy table. Tell me. Tom sighed. He knew he couldn't shield me from this anymore. The police searched his phone. He hadn't wiped it properly. They found floor plans of the Clashen, surgical wing, your exact medical chart, and texts outlining the layout of OR 3. They also found a wire transfer for $50,000 to an offshore account, with texts promising another $150,000 once the job was done. My mom gripped the back of a chair. How much? 50 grand up front, Tom repeated. Martha looked at the empty bassinet next to my bed. They put a price tag on my grandson's life? No one answered. The reality was too grotesque. To someone out there, my life and my son's life were just a line item on a budget, a $200,000 expense to secure a $4.5 million contract. Later that afternoon, Gabe returned to the hospital. He pulled Tom into the hallway, but the walls were thin, and I could hear snippets of their conversation. PR spin. Blind item. Thorne's team. When Gabe walked back in, his face was grim. There's an article circulating online. Tom frowned. What article? Gabe pulled up his phone. It's on a local Chicago gossip blog, the kind that PR firms use to plant fake news. The headline is, High-risk birth at premiere. Private hospital turns chaotic after husband assaults staff. My blood ran cold. My mom snatched her own phone from her purse and furiously searched it. Gabe explained. They didn't use your names, but it's obvious. The article claims a pregnant woman with severe complications, specifically mentioning placenta previa went into distress during a C-section because her hysterical, overbearing husband breached protocol, screamed at the surgical team, and caused a panic that endangered the baby's life. It frames the hospital as the victim of an aggressive family member. I felt physically sick, hysterical, overbearing, endangered the baby. They had taken the exact moment Tom saved my life and twisted it to make him the villain. It was a perfectly sanitized, beautifully written lie designed to discredit us before we could go public. My mom read the article, her hands shaking. She looked up at Tom. Tom, is this because of your business? Is someone trying to ruin you? The room went dead silent. I looked at my mother, the incision in my stomach, burning, but the pain in my heart was worse. Even now, after everything, the first instinct was to wonder if Tom had brought this upon us. The old ghost of her prejudice was still there, the belief that Tom's ambition was reckless. Mom, I rasped, my voice breaking. She flinched. I'm not blaming him, Lauren. I'm just terrified that his business rivals are going to drag you and the baby down with them. Tom stood incredibly straight. He didn't yell. He didn't defend himself. He just looked at her with a quiet, devastating calm. Eleanor, if I wanted to play dirty in business, I wouldn't have done it while my wife's stomach was cut open, and my son hadn't taken his first breath. My mom dropped her gaze instantly. The gentle rebuke hit her right in the chest. I held back a sob. Mom, they are trying to bury the truth. If you doubt Tom, now you're letting them win. My mother looked pale, her lips trembling. She didn't say another word. Gabe cleared his throat to break the tension. The IP address is tracking back to. This article's initial shares belong to marketing accounts associated with Thorn Construction Group, the same accounts that ran cover for them 2 years ago when their suburban housing project had foundation issues. Tom looked at Gabe. Are you sure? I've already sent the digital forensics to the detectives. It proves intent to conceal a crime. Just then, Tom's phone buzzed. He answered it, listened, and his expression turned to ice. Understood. Email me the confirmation. He hung up and looked at us. The police traced the $50,000 wire transfer. It didn't come directly from David Thorne. It was routed through a medical supply vendor owned by Thorne's brother-in-law. Gabe's eyes lit up. Let me guess. The same medical vendor that supplies Lakeside Memorial? Exactly, Tom said. And the administrator who approves those vendor contracts? Tracy Hayes, the scheduling coordinator. My mom gasped. The woman in the waiting room, the one who came out and told me everything was fine, that Tom was just having a panic attack. Tom nodded. The police just arrested her in the hospital IT department. She was trying to permanently delete the server logs for the temp badge she issued to Neville. I closed my eyes. Tracy Hayes. The woman who smiled at my mother and gaslit her, while a fake doctor was holding a syringe of paralytics over my IV line. That evening, Gabe received a preliminary transcript of Tracy's police interrogation. He didn't read all of it to me, but Tom told me the main takeaway. Tracy claimed she thought Thorne only wanted to delay the surgery to mess with Tom's schedule. She said when she found out Neville was unlicensed, she was too afraid of Thorne exposing her kickbacks to stop it. When the detective asked her why she let it go so far, she admitted Thorne had told her, I just need that surgery to not end normally. Hearing that phrase made me physically shake. To David Thorne, my family was nothing but collateral damage on a spreadsheet. I looked at Tom. He was standing by the window, the city lights reflecting off the glass. His anger wasn't an explosion. It was a cold, deep, terrifying focus. He was memorizing every detail, every name, every injustice. I looked at my baby sleeping in the bassinet. I won't let them win. I whispered to the room. I won't let them call my son's birth a protocol. Deviation. On the 3rd day after my C-section, I was finally able to sit up, though every movement felt like a hot wire pulling at my abdomen. But my mind was crystal clear. The fog of anesthesia and terror had burned away, leaving behind a sharp, vivid memory of the blue drape, Nurse Jenkins' shouts, the clatter of dropped instruments, and Tom's desperate grip on my hand. Gabe walked into my room alongside a plainclothes detective from the Chicago PD. Lauren, Gabe said softly. If you're up to it, the detective needs to take your official statement and have you sign the criminal complaint. If you're too tired, we can wait. I looked at my baby, sleeping soundly. Then I looked at the detective. I can do it. Let's do it now. Tom stepped forward. Are you sure, Lauren? You're in pain. I looked at my husband. For 3 days, he had barely slept. He had guarded that door like a sentinel. But I didn't want to just hide behind him anymore. I'm in pain, but staying quiet will hurt worse. The detective read the formal complaint aloud. It detailed every charge: aggravated battery, conspiracy to commit murder, medical fraud, tampering with evidence. It listed Neville, Tracy Hayes, the fake scrub tech Luke Verne, and David Thorne. Do you have any additional requests for the district attorney? The detective asked. I wanted on the record that I refuse any financial settlement or NDA from Lakeside Memorial Hospital, I said, my voice steady. I want everyone who touched this conspiracy named and prosecuted. The ones who planned it, the ones who opened the doors, and the ones who tried to cover it up. The detective nodded and handed me a pen. My hand shook as I signed Lauren Vance on the dotted line. It wasn't my best signature, but it was the most important thing I had ever written. It was my declaration that I was no longer a victim. I was a witness. Martha quickly wiped my sweaty forehead with a cool cloth. Lie back down. Sweetie, you did good. I'm not doing this to be vindictive, Mom, I told her. I'm doing this so when my son grows up, I don't feel like a coward. Martha turned away, wiping a tear from her cheek. Suddenly, my own mother stepped up to the side of the bed. She had been lice fermentally isn't live, completely silent all morning. She looked at me, her voice thick with emotion. Lauren, I am so sorry. It wasn't her usual, I'm sorry you feel that way apology. It was heavy, raw. I'm sorry I didn't believe in him, she wept. I'm sorry I judged him for being careful. I'm sorry I let some corrupt hospital administrator convince me my own son-in-law was crazy. I almost lost you because of my own arrogance. Tom started to quietly leave the room to give us privacy, but my mom called out, Tom. He stopped. She didn't call him by his name with that usual aristocratic distance. She looked at him, tears ruining her makeup. I was wrong. I measured a man's worth by his bank account and his pedigree. I thought a man from a working-class town couldn't protect my daughter. But if you hadn't been in that room, if you hadn't stood your ground. She choked on a sob. Tom walked back over. You don't need to say all this, Eleanor. Yes, I do, she insisted. I have said a lot of cruel things over the years. An apology now feels cheap, but I mean it. Tom looked at her, his exhausted eyes softening. I never protected Lauren to prove a point to you. She's my wife. That little boy is my son. Whether you accept me or not, I will always do what a husband and a father is supposed to do. My mom broke down completely. That was the ultimate defeat of her pride. Tom had never needed her permission to be a good man. Later that afternoon, Tom told me what happened in the hallway while I was resting. My mom had approached Martha by the large window overlooking the Butte, Chicago skyline. Martha, I owe you an apology, my mom had said. Martha looked uncomfortable. Oh, Eleanor, let's just leave the past in the past. No, we can't, my mom insisted. I looked down on you. I looked down on your homemade food, your clothes, your town. I thought I knew how to protect my daughter, but I just made her miserable, caught between us. Martha stayed quiet for a long moment, watching the traffic below. Finally, she spoke. My family is poor, Eleanor. I didn't have a trust fund to give Tom. I didn't have connections, but I taught him one thing. When you take a wife, you never let her stand alone. He did that in the operating room, so I figure I didn't do a half-bad job raising him. My mom lowered her head. You did a much better job than I did. Martha shook her head. It's not a competition. The kids survived. That's a blessing. As long as we're breathing, we can fix our mistakes. The only real tragedy is knowing you're wrong and being too proud to change. When Tom told me that, I cried silently into my pillow. Human hearts aren't torn clothes. You can't just stitch them up and expect them to look brand new. But, for the first time, my mother was no longer looking down at my husband's family from a pedestal. That night, my mom tentatively walked into my room. Lauren, can I hold my grandson? Before, she would have just said, give him to me. Let Grandma hold him. This time, she asked. I nodded. Wash your hands first, Mom. Support his head. She followed every instruction. Holding little Luke, she didn't boast to me. She just whispered to the baby, Grandma is so sorry, little one. Grandma is going to learn how to love you guys the right way. A week later, the developers of the Lakefront project held a massive press conference in downtown Chicago to announce their final contractor decisions. Tom wasn't going to go, but I told him he had to. I'm staying here with you and Luke, he said. You have to go, I told him. Not because the project is more important than us, but because they tried to use us to break you. You have to stand tall in that room. He kissed my forehead, put on his best suit, and went with Gabe. David Thorne was at the event, working the room, shaking hands, flashing his lockestins, purting the creating staudier, blinding, predatory smile. During his speech, he even made a veiled, passive-aggressive comment about Tom. Recently, some competitors have tried to use personal family drama to gain sympathy points in the boardroom. But in construction, we rely on concrete, not crying. Tom sat in the back row, not reacting. He didn't need to. Just as Thorne stepped off the podium, 4 Chicago PD detectives in suits walked into the ballroom. In front of every major developer, banker, and journalist in the city, they arrested David Thorne. The arrogant smile vanished from his face as his wrists were secured in handcuffs. The men who had just been clinking scotch glasses with him suddenly backed away, staring at their phones, pretending they didn't know him. When a corrupt man falls, his friends are the first to scatter. The dominoes fell quickly after that. Carter Neville was charged with practicing medicine without a license, aggravated assault, and conspiracy. Tracy Hayes flipped on Thorne to avoid a maximum prison time, handing over all the emails and financial records showing Thorne's bribery network. The fake tech, Luke Verne, confessed to being hired muscle. Lakeside Memorial Hospital faced a massive state audit. The board of directors was forced to fire the risk management team that tried to cover it up. They issued a sweeping public apology to our family. But there was light in the darkness too. Nurse Haley Mills, who had initially been suspended for taking a photo of the patient, tampered schedule, was fully reinstated and publicly commended by the nursing board. Charge nurse Sarah Jenkins became a local hero in the medical community. She remained as tough and demanding as ever, but everyone knew her strictness was the ultimate shield for her patients. Dr. Locke recovered and returned to work, pushing for massive security overhauls in the hospital's credentialing system. A month later, we celebrated Luke's 1-month milestone in our apartment. The braided Axe Ed place smelled amazing. Martha had been up since dawn making a massive pot of chicken noodle soup from scratch, using the ingredients she brought from Ohio. My mom, Eleanor, was helping her set the table, clumsily trying to arrange the plaid napkins because she wasn't used to doing the manual labor of hosting. "Lauren, does the table look okay?" my mom asked. "It looks perfect, Mom." At the end of the afternoon, Tom was standing by the window, bouncing Luke in his arms. The baby was sleeping peacefully, his tiny mouth making suckling motions. My mom walked over to Tom. She looked at him for a long moment, then reached out and gently patted his arm. "Tom, make sure you eat some soup, son. You've lost weight this month." Tom froze. Martha, wiping down the counter, looked up. I felt my breath catch in my throat. "Son." It was the first time she had ever called him that. It wasn't forced, it was completely natural. Tom looked at me, then at my mother. A slow, genuine smile spread across his tired face. "Yes, Mom, I will." Nobody made a big deal out of it, but in that small apartment, I knew a massive chasm had finally been bridged. Not with money, not with status, but with the birthday cake, simple, profound act of mutual respect. I used to think the operating room was where I was weakest, the place where my life was entirely in the hands of strangers. But that room exposed everything. It revealed who was true, who was fake, who possessed a conscience, and who would sell a human life for a profit. It taught me that true evil isn't just the man holding the syringe, it's the corporate suits who call a crime a protocol, deviation to protect their brand. And it taught me about love. Don't judge a person's worth by their zip code, their bank account, or their smooth talking. Sometimes, the quietest, most meticulous person is the one who will stand between you and the fire. Love requires boundaries. It requires standing up for yourself. If you know you are right, never stay silent just to keep the peace, because a peace built on silence is just a tragedy waiting to happen. If you found this story meaningful, please leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for staying with me until the end. I wish you and your family's health, safety, and the courage to always stand in the light. Goodbye, and see you in the next story.